Hi guys, welcome to the second video of this little set. The first video I did was a bit of an unboxing on the spare shell for the Phantom 2. This is a Phantom 2 shell, this is a Phantom 1. What the rest of these videos are going to show, or at least experiment with, is getting your Phantom 1 into a Phantom 2 shell. Why would you do this, people are going to be asking, which is quite understandable. The main reason for this is extra space inside the actual shell. You can actually fit, as I demonstrated on my previous videos, not just one of your Lipos in here, but two of them side by side. So from the point of view of a dual battery setup, much cleaner to be able to do that. You don't have to hang anything under it. It's going to keep the centre of gravity a lot better. Other reasons for doing it, and this may become other future videos, potentially you can use, there is absolutely no reason you can't, you can use a Phantom 2 battery to power the NASA from a Phantom 1. So as we'll see in the future with this video whether or not it all fits together. But if you can mount the board into the Phantom 2 shell, which I'm comfortable we probably will be able to, and all the electrics, you've got a 5200 mAh battery that slots in here. All we need to do is take power from that. It's a 3S, we know that the board will cope with it, the NASA, the motors, etc. No problem there, so we might be able to actually use that to power our craft. Now, what I like about that idea is that the negatives from the point of view of the Phantom 2 are the cost of the battery, number one, and the amount of time it takes to charge between them. Yes, you're going to get a better flight time. You're not going to get as good a flight time in a Phantom 1.5 that we're doing here, because you don't have this smart usage board, because you haven't got the Phantom 2 board. However, you've still got a 5200 mAh battery that you can use. What my intention will be is that I want to be able to use that, or I want to be able to use standard Lipos. I want to be able to sort of swap and change them about. The problem with the Phantom 2 at the moment, as far as I am aware, is that if you try and use standard Lipos inside a Phantom 2 with the Phantom 2 board, the board says, or the firmware certainly says, I'm sorry, but this is a battery error because I don't have my normal battery plugged in. It's a clever way for DJI to basically stop people from putting normal Lipos or copying them. It's very similar to the way that Apple went with their lightning charger, where there's kind of a chip in there. Anyway, I'll stop prattling on. So first and foremost, for this part of the video, this is the Phantom 2 shell. That is going to go over here, out of the way. And let's take Mr. Phantom 1 apart. Zenmuse bracket off, and in fact, whilst I have the Zenmuse bracket in my hand, bring in the Phantom 2 tray again. And in my unboxing video I just mentioned this. This is the Zenmuse bracket that I got with the F450 kit. It's the same one I believe that you get if you buy it on the original Phantom 1. The thread pattern, or the hole pattern, sorry, for this, these are actually designed, these holes here, they're designed for the F450. However, thank you very much to DJI, this is the Phantom 2, and if we just put, so there's actually a screw still in this hole, if we put that over the top here, you will see that the two holes on top, in fact let me just use a screwdriver and do this properly. Okay, you will see that when I do that, lo and behold, the screw holes match up. So you can use your original bracket on the Phantom 2 as far as I can see. No reason why you shouldn't. It's gonna mount a little bit further forward than it normally would, but that might be a good thing because of the extra bulk from the battery behind it. So yeah, so well done DJI for doing that. Certainly not well advertised that they've done that, but promising for the prospect of this. I was thinking I was going to have to make a custom mount of some sort, but fortunately it doesn't look like that's going to be needed. Plug out there, two sets of legs. Right, okay, once again let's pause at this point the Phantom 1 out of the way for a second. We'll bring the Phantom 2 in. And legs. Spare set of legs, £5 from suppliers. Your legs fit perfect. Both sides. No problem at all. So, good news is immediately that the Phantom 1 legs fit directly onto the Phantom 2. Why is that good news? Well, from my point of view, in regards to the FPV under tray, it means that these holes will line up exactly as they stand at the moment, so that's good. So we know it will at least fit where it used to. The other good news is that the compass module, which is nicely fixed on, it is removable, but it's nicely fixed on. It means you don't have to remove it, you don't have to fiddle about with that, and of course you don't have to buy another one. So again, good news from that point of view. I'm going to move that out of the way. Okay, top shell removed. Carefully. So, this is the cover for the Phantom 1. Let's bring in cover for the Phantom 2. So, the real test will be whether or not these match up. Okay, so let's move the Phantom 1 out of the way slightly. So Phantom 1 cover, Phantom 2 base, it's always these smooth little bits for the stickers go at the front, so make sure the GPS doesn't get in the way. That goes on absolutely perfectly. Screw holes are identical, which is good. Let me just get a little bit closer for you so you can see through there. There you go, screw hole. All of these, they're all matching up. You see, no issues there, no movement. Good. So, great news is, for those who want to try this experiment, is the top lid with the GPS already in it. You don't have to rip any of that out, you don't have to worry about it, and of course if you've got nice stickers on like I did, then you don't have to remove them either. So let's move that out of the way. Right, so next thing is the actual lineup of components. Now immediately it's not looking too bad. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to remove the guts from the Phantom, and we're going to have to get it over to here. So I'm going to have to remove all 4 of the motors, leave them loose. ESCs are going to have to come out. They mount on with screws, 2 screws, yeah, so they've got to be undone. Other than that, it's the LED is the key. So the LED is the thing that's going to have the biggest problem potentially, because looking at the Phantom 1, the LED of course has your status light. It's a little bit bright here. Yeah, your status light. So this plugs in there. Now the front of the back of the Phantom 2 of course has a bloody great big hole where the battery goes, because the battery has lights in it, but also it uses the ESCs to light up and give you a battery status. That's not going to be the case for us, so we're going to have to move that LED somewhere, either to the front, either to the underside, but we're going to have to do something with it long term. So that is probably, by the looks of it, depending on how the holes line up for the actual main board, that is potentially going to be the problem. Now, I'm not a complete idiot here. The first thing that I'm going to do before we actually go the route of starting to remove stuff, because when you start removing motors, these little cables, they're very sensitive and you can screw your windings up very easily. So be warned, if you're going to do this, do it very carefully, think it through. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my digital calipers and I'm going to start measuring between screw holes to see whether or not they're actually of the same sort of distance. If they're not, not necessarily a problem. It means that some modification is going to be needed. Might have to bond something, make a bracket. At the moment, from what I can see, there may be some differences, but we will endeavour. Right then, so digital calipers, a big friend of anyone who does this for a hobby, believe me. If you haven't got any for 20 quid, well worthwhile having them. So what I'm first going to do, make sure I've got the orientation of the Phantom the right way round, which I don't. There we go, front to front, back to back. Remember, the hole is at the back of the Phantom 2. Okay, and let's just do a quick measurement. So I'm going to go between these two main holes here, which is near as damn it 46.5 mil, and between the two holes here, they're the same. Okay, screw to screw here. Again about 46.5. 46.5, identical, right. So that is all looking very promising. Looks as if we can move the board. The other thing that I need to measure, fixing points for the ESCs. They look, in fact they use the same holes as these little plates. So the distance between these two holes nearest down at 35.5 should be the same distance between the middle of the screws, and they're the same. Good, good, right. So I'm confident enough to say that the mounting points for the main board are the same on the 2 as they are on the 1. So the ESC points likewise, obviously the motor screws, they're going to be exactly the same. So now we can start the process of carefully lifting everything from this board and placing it down onto this board, which I will begin now. Right then. So I'm going to leave the motors attached. I'm going to actually remove them one by one as the last point of call. Like I say, the most important thing to remember with these motors, and I've learnt through bitter experience, is messing around, twisting them around down here, screwing them around, that will kill your motor. The reason I've got a bunch of heat shrink here is because I did exactly that. I had a bearing go in one of my motors, trying to fit it back into this small enclosure. I had problems with it, I moved it around too much, boom, died. And the way I knew that was that the light didn't actually light up on the ESC. So yeah, just bear that in mind. Just be very, very careful about how you go about doing this. The other thing that we're going to do is I'm going to remove the Zenmuse cable from the actual board. Bear in mind, this is an upgrade board, this is not the original board, so apologies if you're at this stage thinking, why does my board not look like this? And I'm going to unplug the little cable for FPV, which is 3 wires here, which is probably going to fight me. Should put that down on there. So let's start with these ESCs. Okay, now it's going to be very important to remember orientation on everything here, so I suggest just taking a little bit extra time. And of course take some photos. before. Okay, ESCs are off. Okay, so that is everything undone apart from the motors. So now it's going to be the motors, for which I will be doing from underneath. So my plan is to just hang it slightly off the table here, screw or hex screw up from the bottom, undo, 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 let the nuts drop out, and by doing it that way I don't have to worry about moving everything around too much. Right, so motors are loose, ESCs are loose, screws are still in the ESCs but they are completely undone. So the next thing to do is try and retrieve them, because we don't want to lose them. Now again, orientation is very important to remember. Obviously you're going to have to double check all of this once it's all done anyway, but it's still worthwhile just being a bit careful and key. Take a bit of care. So USB cable, I'm going to get that out of the way. Okay. Oh, put that on the floor. Carefully. Right, and the other thing you're going to need to do is unplug the LED cable from the NASA and get that out of the way, because that's going to stay mounted to this frame to begin with. Okay, so now we're going to do a very careful kind of bit by bit lift. This is probably going to be a bit of a nightmare, a bit of an awkward thing. Worst case scenario is I could unplug some of these things, I could desolder. Frankly, as long as you're careful about it, it should be possible to do without having to go that route. And the way I'm going to do it, I think, so I'm just going to sit it on top. Right, Phantom 1 shell out. Now we just carefully put all of this back where it should be. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reattach the motors with 2 screws each, using the same method. At this point I'm just going to line up the board. So the power cable we know has got to come under here and go into the battery area. Right, the board will definitely line up. And in fact I can get that down going to use the new screws for this. Why am I using new screws? Well, the small screws are very easy and very small, obviously, but they're very easy to actually strip the head. And because I've already done this with the power board, I've actually swapped it over for the upgrade board. They've been in, they've been out. These particular ones, they're a bit susceptible to it, so I'm going to just use these new ones just to make sure that it's held down nice and firmly. Peace of mind is never a bad thing. Now it would appear that the holes aren't actually threaded, which is interesting. So you are using, these are actually tappers, these are tapping screws. So when you do it once, make sure you get it straight into the hole, because otherwise you will end up stripping that hole badly. It's a bit bad that it isn't tapped actually. Another reason why you can easily strip the threads, strip the heads of these, because you've got to put quite a lot of force into them using what is fundamentally a very small screwdriver, just to get it nice and tight and snug. Back to doing the motors. Right, so motors are held down, ESCs are next, and again we could use the old, we could use the new. I'm actually going to use the old ESC frosted glass, for the reason that the new ones, they don't have the thread in them. So these are already threaded, I know they're going to fit, they're the same screws. So what I will just do is just slot them in and make sure that they do fit in the right place, which they do perfectly. I'll just give you a quick demonstration. There we go. So that's all in, fits perfectly. Good. So the ESCs are in. The main board is loose fitted, but fits. Obviously the final bits that I've got to do in regards to the transmitter, I've got to get the holes through there. The Zenmuse cable as well, which is always a pain. In fact, the good news is, everyone, is that the holes they've given you in the Phantom 2 are bigger, so you don't have to go through so much pain. I will demonstrate that. So this is the Phantom 1, get me little digital calipers out. Hole that you pass your Zenmuse cable through, 5.75mm, probably more like 5.5 because that was a slight angle. And the holes that we pass them through on the 2 are a lovely 7.8. So that is going to make life a lot better. And there we go. Hopefully that will still work. Right. So LED still to come from that. But there's the Zenmuse cable, and this is going to pass a hell of a sight more easily through this hole. Don't believe the videos, people. Put it next to the hole that it actually plugs into, otherwise it won't reach properly. So this cable is at its fullest extent right now. So that's not actually plugged in. And this has got to get to the back of the Zenmuse when it's plugged in here. As I say before, normally on the old Phantom, this was plugged in, or this was mounted about here. So it only had to reach about this part. It's now got to reach all the way forward here. So we may run into troubles with this. So I'll see. I have to admit, I'm probably not going to mount the Zenmuse to this myself. full term because it's on my my Zugon 10, but I might end up getting a second one at some point. Now, the alternatives to that are few and far between, really, because if you stretch the cable forward too far, you're still going to have the same problem. So the only alternative is to use the black cable that comes with the that actually comes with the Zenmuse if you've got the original Zenmuse kit. Again, my problem with that is it's mounted to my Zugong, so I'd have to actually borrow that, which I don't really want to do. So anyway, I'm going to leave this in here. I'm going to plug it in. I'm going to hope for the best. Interesting. Now what I didn't notice, which is very good, is that DJI have provided us with a hole. Let me just focus that a bit better. So there is actually a hole for what I would imagine is probably going to be the antenna if you're using a stock antenna. Obviously I'm not using a stock antenna, I'm using my own Futaba. However, that gives me a nice little space for me to put my auxiliary power cables and put them out through there, leaving me with a ridiculous amount of cable, but never mind, beggars can't be choosers. Not difficult to sort that out afterwards. Okay, so AV cable is now through as we need it. Right, so that is now pretty much everything all in place as it should be. The only thing we've now got to do is we've got to deal with this LED. So we peel off the little rubbery bit. And for the sake of doing it, I'm going to undo the USB thing. That's come off nice and easily for me because I've done this before. It's normally got a little bit of kind of gum on there, kind of a sealer, and then it's just a case of undoing these little screws. Now these really are tiny threads. As you can see, the way I'm doing it is I'm sticking the screwdriver all the way through. There you go, and that's how you get a nice good grip on it. Then what falls out is your little sphere, your little frosted glass. It's the thing that holds it on. So we're now free from the Phantom 1 shell. Trouble that we've got here is we don't actually have a place to put the LED. So we've got the little power board there. That is our LED, and normally that sits behind our frosted little hole. So to get around this problem, a number of things we can do. We can drill a hole, we can mount it somewhere else, we can potentially mount it on the top shell, maybe, being very careful about how we do it. Maybe not. The obvious choice is, in fact, on the Phantom 2 shell, is to mount it, oh there we go, on the front. Now normally there's a USB connector here, make sure that's on focus for it. So normally there's the hole for the LED. This is where actually you do plug in the LED from the new board. So what I could do, because I don't really want to destroy this nice little hole, because I can use that actually potentially to use an LED plug-in, but I could drill a little hole out and fix the status light to the front. Only disadvantage of doing that will be that the actual wire from the NASA to the LED is going to need extending. Not exactly the most difficult thing to do, to be honest, fairly straightforward in fact, by simply reusing the plug and splicing some cable onto it. So that seems like a relatively good option. I'm not going to do that at the moment. For the time being, I'm just going to let this plug in. Okay, so now it's just a case of putting the main board nice and tight back on here, which means screwing down these rather tight threaded tap screws. Four. Good. Everything bolted down, everything seems to be out of the way. Only one question I have is in regards to this. Let's see, this little capacitor here, if I can move my finger to it, being bent back ever so slightly. Now that may well get in the way, if I just move it around, of the top board. So just got to be a bit careful with that. I'm just going to give it a bit of a trial fit just to see whether or not it will actually go down properly. Yep, that seems to go down there. So there we go. Just a case of doing it up now, and I have myself a Phantom 1 in a Phantom 2. Legs and everything to go. Okay, so I've decided to stop right now to actually fix this LED in place, so it's a nice finished job that I'm showing everyone. Now what I'm intending to do is I'm going to make an extension cable that will come as part of this video of what you need to do it, and where I'm going to mount it. So to show you where I'm going to mount it, it's going to be at the front, and a bit difficult to see, but on here you've got the word Phantom, and as a guide basically I'm going to put, this is the little LED frosted glass, where the word Phantom is, right through the O is going to be one screw hole, and then I'm going to line up between the letters H and A, and that's pretty much going to be a nice place to mount it. Pretty much look like stock from the Phantom 1, but obviously it's going to be at the front rather than the back. Disadvantages. Number one, it's going to be at the front, so obviously when you do your startup you usually look at your Phantom, you usually stand behind it so it's orientated so the IOC is in the right direction going forwards rather than backwards. Obviously if you're an experienced enough pilot, I mean I rarely use IOC, so it's not really going to be much of a problem for me. The other thing is, of course, you want to be able to see when you've got the right satellites and everything, so might have to rethink that. If you fly in the dark, this is something you definitely don't want to do, because bear in mind your camera is going to be sat at the front of this. The Zenmuse, is going to mount slightly further forward, but of course if it's flashing away up here, you know how bright this light is. That light is going to be pretty bright, and you're probably going to get that flash on your video. So just think about how you might do that. Future ideas, I will probably create a little shapeways part that will mount via either Velcro, sticky stuff, or something that will mount on the back here, and then the LED will sit at the back where it used to, and all you have to do is either pull the cable through this hole here, or you'll just have to make a little hole in the Phantom. Like I say, that will come in the future. At the moment I'm quite happy to just drill into this and make it a kind of a finalised solution so I can use this as much as I want to. So yeah, so that's the plan anyway. So it's going to be a bit of Dremel, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, so let's do a little bit of drilling. Dremel with a 2.5mm bit, and literally the first thing we're going to do is just drill right through the O. Not an easy way of showing you guys this, so I'll do the drill and then you can see the result afterwards. Okay, so first drill hole done. There we go, right through the O. So now what I've done is I've measured the distance on a micrometer, the digital caliper, sorry, and that will give me the distance between there and the next hole, and it is literally slap bang between, dead central between the H and the A. So another hole. Okay, second hole done. There we go. Looks like it's ever so slightly off centre, but doesn't really matter. So now all I'm going to need to do is probably ream those holes out slightly. Right, so 2 holes. And that fits right on there. Boom, 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 boom. And obviously the LED actually screws onto this anyway, so so that's the next thing to do, is just to screw that in place. And then it will be a case of extending the cable. Of course, what I also need to do, he says, thinking about this, is I need to make a hole so the actual LED can come through. So right in the middle of those 2 holes, we've got to have a hole so the actual light from the LED can come through. Kind of important, that. And that needs to be about the size of that circular bit, just in there. Right, not the neatest of jobs, but it will serve its purpose and it will be covered up anyway. Okay, clear a bit of the mess. Right, so LED pops in there. Oh, sorry, the plastic cover. I'll attach the cable to it as well. Because obviously that's got to fit in there. But this can come out the front if needs be. Okay. LED fitted. So, as you can see, screws right through there, comes out the other side. Slightly backwards from the original, but quite stock looking as well. There is a tiny little gap just down here. It might just be wise to fill up with a bit of white sealer or something, but still. So then it's really just a case of extending that wire, which doesn't need to be extended a long way. 4 cables straight into the NASA there. So I'll create a little plug for that, and that is pretty much it done after that. What I will do is try testing fitting the LED cable here. And then seeing whether this will all go together. Could be a real question. Right. Yep. It will go down. Good. So there is a little bit of impact at the front with the LED cable, with the LED USB cable plugged in. There's a little tab in the top of the shell that just rubs up against it. It doesn't look as if it's going to be the end of the world, but it is just pushing a little bit hard on there, so I might just trim that down, sand that off maybe with a Dremel, just for a nice snug fit. Okay, so to extend the LED cable, I've actually found something that I don't really feel too proud about showing, because it's not something that you guys can just sort of pick up yourselves. However, with the Zugong purchase, the Immersion RC Zugong that I purchased the other day, they actually came with some extension cables because it's a really tight fit for the NASA. But this is basically the sort of thing that I was intending to make anyway. So hopefully you can see this. It's a Molex connection, standard 4-pin Molex connection at this end, and then there's this little plug which is kind of a Molex plug on the end of it, but it allows for the little sliders. The LED has little grooves on the 4 pins. Don't get too hell-bent on that. Let me just hold this up to you. So these little grooves that you can see, if I can just, there you go, at the top. Worst case scenario, buy yourself a 4-pin female Molex connector and just sand them off. Dremel them down, sand them off. You could cut them with a craft knife. The main point of doing this is to be sure that you've got your pins in the right direction. So I can say from this that this should be this way round, plugging in to the NASA back here. So red for me is on the left hand side, so all I need to do is I take my little extra connector there, plug the 4-pin Molex into the NASA nice and snug, fold it over the side, and then make sure that the red is matched up to the red of that cable. A little bit hard to do with only one hand, but there we go, and then slide it down by the side. So I now have my LED all plugged in. If you do need any help on making that cable, I can always do a little video of actually making the cable itself. That's not a major problem. Obviously it depends on how much demand there is for it, but fundamentally that's all you've got to do, is you just got to extend it so it will reach the back of it. So yeah, so that's the LED actually all sorted, nice and quickly, all fixed, all mounted. Just a case of putting the top back on and going from there. So I'll do that now. Just a quick demonstration of how much space we've now got to play with in there. Loads. The other modification I may well do in the future, if you do subscribe, is it seems some clever chap over, I'm not sure what country he's from, but he's found on the Phantom 1 with the upgrade board how to create a CAN bus port using a bit of soldering. It's quite an involved process. You've got to do some fairly small soldering, but basically it allows you to have a CAN bus port. So being that I own iOSD Mini for my Zugong, that is very appealing. So I might just give that a go at some point. So yeah, if you are interested in that, subscribe. You know, if you're gunning for it, then post me a message, tell me about it. You know, the more people who message me, the more people I know want to see it. So yeah, let me know. Anyway, I'll carry on with this. So you get a little rubber blank for your USB hole. And like I say, chances are in the future I will actually make that USB hole do what it's supposed to by putting a female connector in there. Anyway, there it is, standing proud. Still a few things to do up, obviously, screw holes, everything like that. What I'll do is I'll stop the video now, I'll finish all of the little tidbits and finishing up, get a battery, plug it in, make sure all the motors turn in the right directions. Obviously after that I'm going to still need to do things like an IMU, but ultimately you've not really done anything other than reshell it. This is literally all you've done, but you've just reshelled it with a much bigger shell. So you've got all the options of what you had before. Everything as it was with the Phantom 1. So yeah, so I'll come back in a moment when it's all done. Okay, so the question now is, will it fire up? Let's give it a go. There we go, and as you can see, that's powered up and working. So I'll do a quick motor on test. ESC is working. Should be clockwise. Yep. Anti-clockwise. Yep. Clockwise. Yep. All good. So there we have it. That is the proof that you can fit the upgraded, certainly, Phantom 1 into a Phantom 2 case. Stay tuned, subscribe, and like I say, the next venture for me will be creating an under tray that works for this, looking at the battery solution, looking at potentially, hopefully all going well, I'll buy a bigger battery and a charger, and then we'll see what sort of flight times we get out of it. I know I'm not the first person to do this, I'm sure I won't be the last, but you know, hopefully you've enjoyed watching it. Hopefully if you've taken the task on yourself, it won't traumatise you too much. Really, just to summarise, the main things to think about are all the screw holes on all the screw threads, they fit in exactly the same places, don't need to worry about that. The main thing is moving that LED into a position that's usable for you and extending it. So potentially you're going to either need to buy an extension cable, if there is such thing, for a 4-pin extension cable. I think there probably is, it's just a Molex, and you're going to have to just think about where you want to mount it. Potentially you could also, I don't see why not, invest in a NASA version 2 LED on its own for about 12 quid, and you could just plug that directly in to the NASA and just avoid having any of this. So that's another option. So plenty of things to think about, but ultimately, just to prove once again, that is a Phantom 1 with one battery, and while not plugged in, ample space for 2. There we go. Stay tuned.